Last week, it was long-serving stalwart David Christopherson who said he won't run again in 2019. Today, it's the NDP's foreign affairs critic, Hélène Laverdière. Both have good personal reasons for stepping back, but what effect, or they say they do, what effect will their departures have on the party? Marcella, I'm going to have to start with you again. So is there something to read into this? Because a lot of people in Ottawa are kind of talking about it.
Yeah, well, you know, I think, look, as you said, they're both retirement age. They've both been had long and impactful careers, both at the community level and then nationally. So you can understand when people want to take a break. I personally think it's quite healthy when politicians pick an end date and don't just wait to get defeated or you know, pass away in office. So you know, there's all that. But I think it probably is. It can highlight probably some of the stresses on the party right now. I think it's been very clear that our new leader, that Jagmeet Singh, has had an issue finding his feet in terms of a core message or messaging that he wants to promote. Some would argue part of that's because he's not in the House, so maybe difficult to connect the way he would like. But, you know, as we all know, there's other ways to do that. So anyway, I just think that's a communications problem. They obviously have a fundraising problem, which is starting to show up in the numbers. So that's saying he's not necessarily connecting to the base voters like he could. And then I think the third challenge, and you know, I say this with my prairie boots on today, is that by taking such a hard stand on Trans Mountain and not even trying to find a path where he could try to balance, I think, the perspective of both Premier Horgan and Premier Notley, he's basically, you know, told the Prairie New Democrats that we don't really matter to him. You know, he's taken that hard stand, and you know, that's not just folks like me who, you know, are passionate about this issue because I have worked for Premier Notley, and you know, I also just economically agree with it. You're also talking about the voting base, which we know even in British Columbia, New Democrat voters are split on that issue. And so instead of trying to be a voice in the party and among our voters that could say, you know, there's maybe a third way here, a different path to see both sides of this issue, he's taken a hard stand to say, you know, essentially Premier Notley's wrong and Premier Horgan's right. And that's not going to serve him well if he wants to, you know, continue the tradition the NDP's had at least the last 10, 20 years of trying to be a national party. So those are just three of the things that occur to me right now. And I think those are bigger challenges than, you know, some very hard-working, long-standing MPs resigning.
There are a lot of differences to the situation, Rachel, but is there sort of a little bit of introspection going on, do you think, in Jagmeet Singh's office? I remember in the last election and sort of the year before it when John Baird left, and there's all this speculation, like, does this mean anything for the fortunes of the party? What do you think, given your experience, is happening in that office now?
Yeah, I mean, given the fact that you're losing experienced and influential MPs, that's never a good sign. But look, this has been going on for a while now. Like, the NDP has been non-existent on the federal landscape in the last few by-elections. They've been down to the single digits. It doesn't seem like the party knows what it stands for. And to Marcella's comments, there seems to be some pretty serious internal rifts too, that need to be sorted out.
Is that growing pains, or is it more substantive?
I think it's more substantive than that. I don't think the NDP has been in this position for a very long time, and I think it's going to be critical for Jagmeet Singh to sort of figure out what direction he wants to take the party in, how he's going to achieve electoral success, and what he wants to kind of stand for and present to voters. Because right now, the party seems to be drifting a bit aimlessly. And look, I don't you know, say this out of any desire to be mean to Jagmeet Singh. I want him to succeed for my own selfish reasons. But really, the NDP is just, they're not doing well, and that's putting it kindly. So all of these really major problems in the party, with their levels of support, with their ability to fundraise, with their sort of ability to talk about what they stand for as a party, all of those really need to be resolved, and quickly. We're like a year out from the next election.
Yeah, 14, 15 months. Is there enough time, though?
Well, I think there are a few leaks in the boat, and I'm not sure there are enough fingers and that the leader's got to be able to plug them. He's got to figure out a way to pull the party together and deliver a message. I think there's time to build a more cohesive message. The challenge for him is he's got to build a cohesive party that he's part of. I think caucus in Ottawa is really solid, and they've banded together, but I'm not sure they've banded together behind him.
So does he need a seat?
I think he needs a seat. And, you know, there's the rationale people say he needs to go out around the country, get better known. That's not really working. I think he's got to establish his bona fides in Parliament with the national media, using the national media as a way to get out and get the support of his caucus members. I mean, 2 long-serving members, sure, I understand they're in their mid-60s and they're thinking about, do I really want to still be an MP in my 70s if I win my seat again? And maybe they're reading the tea leaves a little bit saying, yeah, I don't want to run and not win. So it's very tricky, and it has left and will leave a gap for the NDP because Hélène Laverdière, thank you, beat Gilles Duceppe when she first came into politics. And Dave Christopherson has been around. He beat a Liberal cabinet minister when he first came into politics. So Dave's seat in particular has been a strong NDP seat for a while, maybe not so much in the next election. And Hélène, it just, I think, leaves that seat up for grabs in Quebec. So that has opened, it has increased the vulnerability of the NDP in Quebec, increased it a little bit in Ontario, and the leaders really got to step up and pull people together.
Do you think getting a seat is integral to that process over the next year, Marcella?
Well, I think, look, what I think about him running for a seat, I think now more than ever they have to consider it. And I think what it would allow him to do is give him a bit of a stage to try and start this process, which I agree with Susan, actually, but that is part of it, certainly. And it would certainly, you know, focus everyone on getting something positive done that everyone could look at. I mean, he was helpful. My understanding is he was quite helpful in the campaign in Ontario. And you know, they didn't end up winning, but they felt very good about their outcomes, and apparently he was helpful in that. So, you know, I think he knows how to campaign. So the question now is, where do you look for that seat? And
well, I think Hamilton. It's just served itself up. I mean, before it was, is he going to run in Mulcair's seat in Outremont, and that wouldn't have worked. But I think Hamilton, it's not that far from his home riding. Yeah. I think he'll be accused of chickening out a little bit if he doesn't step up for this seat, and maybe because Dave Christopherson has initially said he's going to go right till the end. I'm sure he could be persuaded to step down a little sooner and trigger a by-election.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks to the Power Panel, Marcella Munro, Rachel Curran, and Susan Smith.